country, of course, might just not in Africa, but when you are looking at, we wish to look at what is happening in Haiti today, because Haiti is one of those countries with the majority, if not all, the black people. And these people were taken to these countries against their will, and now has become their country. But what is happening there is definitely heartbreaking, and we thought we'll have time to look at that. But because of the live broadcast coming all the way from coming to us from Parliament, we shall not be able to do that. But maybe we'll look at it next week. So normally in the week we start in this program, we start with what has of interest and happened in the week. But because we have such a very short time today, we may not look at all those issues of interest that have happened within this week, but we'll, I think, within that, go straight to our discussion of the cost that Africans are paying in maintaining democracy and implementing democratic reforms in our countries. Like Ndugu Rugarama had, and of course Rachel put it some time back, that maybe we are feeding a foreign beast which does not understand us, and which we also don't understand when we are talking about democracy. Was this an African thinking? Is this democracy that we are talking about today an African thinking, or it is something that we have brought from somewhere else, but still we can't even understand it, and we can't, we are not able to do what exactly someone expects us to do. But as Africans, I think we also have our own things. So we'll go straight to that topic today, and to start off, I think we'll begin with Rachel, and then we'll later on hear from Ndugu Rugarama. So Rachel, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. You're talking about the cost of democracy. This very week here in Kampala, we have been engulfed by a mother of all storms, talking about the expenditure that is directly attributed to legislative matters, if you so will. And there are many questions about the cost of running a legislature in this country. As you know, the model of Western democracy talks about or comes from an angle of sitting on a number of arms of government. Among them, we have the legislature, we have the judiciary, we have the executive. Lately, the executive, of course, has also had its fair share of criticism for excessive administrative costs. We're talking about this country. Now the focus as we talk, there are people who are wondering, really, should this be? I have said many times that the question of whether we should continue with things as is one that I do not know of any country except South Africa in fairly recent history, where they actually had to sit down before in the dying days of apartheid, and they decided among themselves how they want their democracy to be, not the one that says only the white citizens are worth hearing and even contributing to meaningfully in terms of standard of living and so on. The rest of us, Ndugu Mututa, are yet to answer that question. Much of what we are struggling with is something that is a hangover from colonial times, and we have been suffering to that same degree. There's people who wonder, even the numbers that, for example, the parliament in Uganda has, in the representatives that are over 500 in number, considering our economy and considering the population, is this the kind of representation we should have? But we know we are building on things that are a reflection of what is happening in many Western nations. No wonder this experiment is not going well. Unfortunately, because Africans are not big on really
spending a lot of time developing the path that they want to go down. That is why, as you intimated, there are people who are perfecting their walk towards democracy in full view, and it's untidy. We can talk about cases where now people are constructing legal impediments to their opponents. Others are constructing all kinds of artificial barriers to meaningful competition in the political space. So the question is, the cost of democracy in Africa is not a question that any of our leaders, to my knowledge, has ever addressed meaningfully. Everybody is always trying to enter the status quo. Nobody is talking about this thing was dead on arrival. This thing is impossible. It is impossible because I have said many times that you cannot lift these models that were perfected in Italy and perfected in Britain and America and sit it on a society that has a totally different culture, a totally different way of seeing things and doing things, and expecting us to move on as should be. There has been, I believe it was last week, or maybe the week before that, Nduguru Garama, I'm sure recalls even better, when there were a number of African Chief Justices who descended on Kampala. And their argument is that the justice mechanisms that were left us by the colonizers, in many cases, do not do us any favors. So this cost of democracy, I'm saying, it involves looking critically at how we've been exercising executive power, legislative power, and, of course, judicial power. The foundations on which we sit cannot deliver democracy at a reasonable cost. The Western style of democracy is very expensive. The Western style of judiciary or judicial mechanisms is also very expensive. No wonder we're in a state where we say, look, receiving justice as things stand is becoming more and more elusive, at least in the Ugandan case. I don't know about some other countries. Because the mechanisms are very elaborate, and it is also true of these other arms of government. The mechanisms are so elaborate. You see, when you go back to African traditional society, the judicial mechanisms were not as involved. They were not as expensive. They were not set up the way they are set up today. So we are saying in countries that have our own economic restraints, is there any way of making headway when you can only partially fund an expensive enterprise and really get the results you should get?
Yeah, because I agree with you on that. When you look at most of the democracies, and they look at issues of judicial administration, I think Nduguru Garama will talk more on that. But the African family, for example, is not based on the economy, on the commercial setup, not even the society, the African society.
Not even traditional justice mechanisms.
Exactly. But when you look at the law that we practice today, you talk of the common law. It may, talking about the justices who are here, because they are here to discuss, to find alternative systems to administration of justice.
Among other things, because of the cost.
That's so wrong. That is not alternative. That is the first.
The primary.
That's the primary. What we have now, what we are practicing, is the alternative, which is very bad.
And among the objections they had was the cost of these mechanisms. It is too high. You know, this business of the infrastructure in this country, for example, where now they have these court systems in every jurisdiction. Very high.
The cost of hiring a lawyer, talking about the democracy in the judicial system, is so many people, averagely speaking, cannot afford lawyers. At least in Uganda.
Yes.
And that speaks to the African continent. And Even
Let
elsewhere.
alone-
So
No,
democracy,
but
we
even
also
then-
cannot afford democracy
but
for the
even
simple
then-
reason.
even
Even
then-
elsewhere, not just on the African continent. You go to USA and look at who can afford
An attorney.
an attorney for his or her troubles, because in majority of the cases they are troubles anyway. That aside, that is one aspect, the democracy. So democracy in the judicial system. But of course, it is another thing again, if you are able to hire the best lawyer.
And
you
when you are
win.
talking about a best lawyer, what are you talking about?
No, you see,
The most deceptive.
we must,
I mean, these are the things we're
Oh, by
talking
the way,
about.
Justice has said it.
we must be sincere. You see, when I say the best lawyer, I'm talking about somebody that you have paid very well, who is going to give you a case the best of their attention. And in majority of the cases, when you don't give the best of the attention to your client, to do research about his matter, and to make the best of the presentations before the judges out there, honestly,
Yeah, but
you cannot
counsel,
expect that the
talking about
you
that,
cannot expect that the bench is going to do magic.
and that's what her point, which is which
And
the
the
thing
justices
we're
also
talking
said
about,
it.
the justice of justice. Why, first of all, why do I need a lawyer? Because
It's
in
the
the
system we have.
in the African context, he's talking about the African setup. I have a case with you. We go to the elders council,
Clan or
or
whoever.
clan, and we sort our things out.
But that's that now. Of course, we have particularized this to the judicial way. We have looked at it in the lenses of the judiciary. But I think when you look at the case of Rwanda, for instance, this is what they did. What was the name of that court
Gacaca.
system? The Gacaca. Then when you look at the Truth and Reconciliation, that was
South
South
Africa.
Africa. We have got some isolated cases on the African continent and beyond where they have gone back
Exactly.
to the original way of settling their disputes.
And I've got results.
And they have got
And it's
beautiful,
fast
beautiful
and efficient.
results. But the cost of democracy. First of all, what is this democracy that we are talking about? Anyway,
Western democracy.
the Greeks, when you go back into history, although there is a claim that majority of the so-called Greek way of administration and democracy was actually copied from the African
Which is true,
continent.
yeah.
When you go to you look at the works of one of the great works of the professor, what is the name again? One of the best historians that we have on the African continent. I will get the name as we go on. We get along with the debate. You will come to the realization that actually, for him, he's very emphatic. He says, majority of what they say is the Greek civilization is actually the African civilization.
Sure.
Simply because the European cannot bring himself to the reality to accept that actually this is the African civilization. He calls it the Greek civilization. You wonder even where that went, because when you look at Greece now, it is the caste, the old man of Europe.
Exactly.
If you take the standard
Yeah.
of that, you look at the indicators. I think Greece has perpetually, over a number of years, failed to justify as to why it is claimed to be the very first civilization of Europe and the world. That aside, one of the philosophers from that Greek society looked at democracy, and I think in view of politics and political administration, it is that of the people, for the people, and by the people. That is a very powerful statement and has got far-reaching implications, because where do you, under the sun, get of the people, for the people, by the people? In majority of the cases, that does not happen.
Yeah.
At least, maybe if you talk about a minimum consensus, that a few representatives will come and determine for the majority of the people.
Yeah, because not cutting you short, remember the recent elections in Congo and many of other countries where you have a population of about close to
110 million.
yeah, and
or
how
so.
many people voted? Now you
And China?
you get yeah, exactly. Is that the decision of the people?
Yeah,
Who are the people? Of course. Then that one.
Exactly. So that's why we say the cost of democracy. So your question about the cost of democracy, even on the African continent and beyond, by the way, not just on the African continent, even beyond, is very high. How? Leave alone that organizing an election, and we have got a number of countries, by the way, on the African continent, save these ones which come up and say, no, we are going to do it our own way. The other time, the Electoral Commission in Uganda, when they sent figures to Parliament for approval, they said, this is a lot of money. I said, yeah, but this is democracy.
Yes.
The cost of democracy is very high. Do you want turmoil? You want chaos? This is the cost of democracy. Let's toe the line.
Sure.
Now, what we have had for a very long time, even especially after the departure of the white man on the African continent, has been grappling with the question of democracy. We've had a situation where going into the democratic practices, quote unquote, democratic practices that the white man left with us, holding periodical elections, whereby it is one man, one vote, issues of civic education, and we are very low on civic education, almost in the entire Africa. Our civic levels are extremely very low, and when you've got a society whose civic levels are very low, you cannot expect a very good decision. They are not going to be able, even when they are given their vote, the way they exercise their vote will be in exchange of a piece of soap. So at the end of the day, when a society is not empowered enough to know that the purpose for which I am voting is to access better services, but they exchange the vote for a piece of soap and some few coins, then you will get a situation whereby the cost of democracy in the long run, even in the short run to start with, is very high, and in the long run is extremely unbearable.
Maybe you are teaching or you are telling these Africans to have these elections, to have these exercises, which are completely out of touch with reality, or they don't understand.
A sham,
Because
really.
yes, if we up to today, over these years, because these things have not started today, having elections in Africa, up to today, people seem not to appreciate. And we still talk of civic education like we are just starting now.
No,
Don't
civic
you think there's a
education, by
problem?
the way, to you, Comrade Mtuta, and our dear viewers, in majority of the cases, the civic education is not done, generally speaking, simply because majority of the sitting governments don't find it in their favor to do civic education. What we do have in majority of the cases is simple voter education. Now, when you've got voter education, which is always done a few months away from the actual casting of the vote,
We are registering now.
then that is update, but it is for a political party. I don't think the Electoral Commission in Uganda has displayed the register. So we are not updating for the national.
Yeah, because
we are
most of
updating for different
most
political
of the
parties and NRM
most
in
of
particular.
the civic education is supposed to actually be done by the political parties.
No, civic education is supposed to be a deliberate action of government, because civic education is an entire huge component. It is because voter education is a subset of civic education. Civic education, the element that the entire human being is supposed to be consciously aware of why he, she does what she does in line of politics, in line of economics, in line of social sphere, cannot be managed by the different political parties. But it should be a sitting government, and these are values, really. So a genuine, a sincere sitting government carrying out civic education would positively impact on everybody regardless of your political affiliation, regardless of your religious affiliation, regardless of sex. But that does not happen. Why does it not happen? It does not happen making the cost of democracy very high. This is where we are now. We are at a point where, for instance, a desire to register alternative political parties on the African continent is almost like a camel entering through the eye of a needle. The legal barriers for you to register a political party are not simple. And the examples abide. You go to Senegal, you look at, for instance, Sonko. Sonko, the way he has been struggling to make good of his political party is under, of course, the contestations that his political party, or whatever you want to call it, and Salah has not come to fruition. You come to Rwanda, you look at those who want to bring the political party, register political parties, or even make the existing political parties function. It does not happen that way. My own country is also suffering. Here, we are also suffering with the political parties who want to exercise what other normal political parties elsewhere should be doing. And of course, the arguments that are advanced are, you see, that answers now the cost of democracy. When you say the cost of democracy, registering a political party on the African continent is very hard. Even when you have registered it, allowing it to perform the functions for which it was formed is also not possible. They will evoke all sorts of, you remember what was this law to do with gathering?
The Public Order Management
law, whereby that you do not have to congregate. Even demonstration, by the way, even when the Constitution says peaceful demonstration, you don't just demonstrate. You know what, generally speaking, on the African, and by the way, I thought it was an African thing. Even when you go to Europe and America, you remember the other group that was demonstrating in America when America had attacked Iran. All of them were bundled up, and for the very first time I saw serious kiboko, like the Chiboko squad here we have in Uganda. And some of them, it is said, they were taken into cells for extremely long hours. So therefore, the cost of democracy, even at the level of exercising your political freedom, once you are in any political party, is very high. Trying to form alternative political party from the existing ones is also not simple. But even then, assuming that there are no political party, because you see, when I make such a submission, I may be mistaken for somebody who is carrying out an argument that it is only in alternative political parties or different political parties that democracy is exercised. In DRC, we have got well over 250 political parties. Does it mean that DRC is a democratic country? So at the end of the day, if we can get going by a system that is for the people, of the people, of the people, for the people, by the people. If that is being achieved in a country like China, for instance,
And the Arab world?
that the services, or the Arab world, Qatar, or these United States of, what is it?
UAE.
Yes.
United
If
Arab
it is
Emirates.
being achieved, to me, that is now democracy, and the democracy
And-
is cheap that
And
way.
of course, she's going to come in. You have talked about two examples, and I think we can pick it from there. When you look at what's happening in China, for example, and you look at what's happening in the UAE, is this the European democracy?
It is
Of course
not.
not.
It is
They are
not.
building up on what traditionally was their democracy,
This
their
is-
governance
This
style.
is the point I'm making
Yes.
as I conclude on this. This is the point I'm making. The problem is that our own democracy was rudely interrupted by colonialism with all its attendant effects. Now, when that happened, we are still suffering the pangs of that dictatorial regime called colonialism, which has not even left, because the imperialism is the fascist way that colonialism now being reproduced in neo-colonialism can impact on man. And for that matter, we have a situation where we still think that what we're experiencing now is actually the endemic nature of an African man. We fail to see that even where the African leaders have got, because I will not shy away from saying that we have got the problems which we have created ourselves, the ones which we can manage to sort out, but we refuse to sort them out, and we want to heap everything to the white man. Truth of the matter is that the white man has always moved in a very subterranean of ways. Even where you don't easily see him, he's there and he's influencing things. For instance, some of these terrible dictators, globally speaking, are being supported by the white man. As long as you are keeping his agenda alive,
Yeah, and
he will have no problem
And,
with
and
you.
for me, she comes in. For me, and a number of times I've said, I have no problem with that. I don't blame them for that. For the reason is that, I mean, Africans are not headless, and many of the other leaders. If you are going to allow that to happen, then I think because if Africans were in the same situation, we would have done the same to the rest of the world. So I think on that one, it is the African leaders and the African people, the democracy of the Africans to be blamed. I think you have a point on that.
Yes, we're talking about the cost of democracy. However, I think the difference between the Chinese approach and the difference between UAE and Qatar, who have executive monarchs, by the way, at the helm of their operations, is that the people who are sitting at the top of these administrations have a very clear and unwavering commitment
To the people.
to the movement of their societies
Sure.
to the next level.
I agree.
Remember, some of these people, UAE and Qatar and so on, those positions are inherited because they're monarchs. But the structure that was set decades ago.
The Western would say that's not democratic.
They tried. But because the people who started this arrangement decades ago, the fathers of these present rulers, in some cases the grandfathers, were people who laid out a very clear vision
Sure.
for where they are. Many of these societies began on oil wealth, the Qatars of this world. But they had a clear vision to move beyond dependence on on resources such as fossil fuels, actually. And many of those societies have now gotten to a level where more of their money is from investments
Business.
than from what they got from the ground originally. But what we are saying is that that is something that we lack. the administrations in Africa in general do not have clear long-term visions for their societies. It's always very much about surviving the day. We're talking about, you cannot ensure that you perfect the delivery of this democratic model when you live for the day. These are age-old concepts, things that will outlive you. We have leaderships that do not believe they will ever leave the places that they occupy at this time, which is extremely shallow if you ask me, because no one has been able to sustain that arrangement.
Talk about Zuma.
Zuma is also one who does not want to finish his role. He wants to be at the top until we bury him. But more than that, he has descended into the trenches where he's now in an eternal battle with the president of the country, who's Ramaphosa. He has never forgiven him for having dared to expose the thuggery that his administration represented.
Sure.
The daylight plundering.
Information. You see, my sister, right from the start, you remember that Dr. Dlamini Zuma, the wife to Jacob
Zuma,
was standing against Ramaphosa. And
So
there
that
was
battle-
a narrow win, a narrow one, about
So-
9 votes or
within
so.
the ANC.
So this man,
for the
Zuma,
ANC.
it is even said, even at this time, when he says that now he's really held, leading the formation that is called Umkhonto we Sizwe.
Mkhonto we Sizwe, yeah.
Of course, they are now in a court battle where ANC says, look, we have a copyright to that name. It was started by Mandela,
Yeah.
who was our own. For you, you went your
The
separate
military
ways.
wing.
Please, that is our thing. You know they're in court.
Mm.
But more than that, it is sad that even before a generation passes, since the leading light of the independence movement of South Africa breathed his last, that is Nelson Mandela, they have now descended to the little petty politicking, away from the grand ideals that present-day South Africa sits. These are people now who are arguing about basically
Survival.
plundering the country is really what they're talking
Yeah,
about.
because I was saying you talk about Zuma because you brought in the point of when you are at the helm, what you do will definitely sometimes would want to see things happen in your way that will favor
But
your
you
way.
see, the narrow vision, we talked about leaders who don't have vision for their societies. They have visions for their daughters and their sons and their grandmothers and the neighbors across the street, but not for the nations. So this man, he has never forgiven the South African leadership for daring to challenge the terrible leadership that South Africa endured under his watch. And he believes that because he joined the struggle for independence when he was a teenager, no one should question the fact that he exercised poor leadership.
Not the Ramaphosa whom they got from the wing executive
From Wandegea.
of a mining conglomerate.
Okay. So now the latest pretense that the better alternative to the leadership in South Africa is really masked by greed.
Yeah, that entitlement.
The cost of leadership, Ndugu Mututa, in Africa, the most steep cost is greed.
Yeah, because now it is true that he can have claim that, and of course Ndugu Rugarama talked about it, the cost of registering a new party, a political party in Africa.
Because you're endangering greed, it
Yes.
can't be allowed.
And now Zuma seemed to be saying that because of divergent views with ANC, then ANC is not allowing me to have my own political party.
No, but
at
But
the
it's
same
not
time,
true.
but at the same time, I think for me, I was happy when ANC said enough is enough with Zuma. First of all, the courts in South Africa saying that once you are convicted of a crime and sent to prison exceeding 6 months, with no option of bail.
Fine.
And
Yeah.
by the way, even before you finish that point, the reason why Zuma is on untenable ground is that it is not an ANC charge that caused his court,
Exactly.
that caused his sentencing.
Yes.
It was because of contempt of court.
Yes. And why contempt of court?
Because he's entitled.
Yes, he had been asked to come to court to explain a number of corruption scandals that were during his administration as president. And to me, if you have no a problem, why can't you go to court? And if you are really a leader who is worth the name, why can't you appear before court? And if you refuse to appear court tomorrow when you become a president, what will happen to the justice system of that country?
And I think therein is the answer. The cost of the unmanageable cost of democracy in Africa is because of leaders who have lost all sense of the vision that the founding fathers had.
And now, because the other day, former President Zuma was blaming President Ramaphosa, for his problems, and he's now blaming the Deputy Chief Justice who is heading the investigations, Justice Zondo. Now, the problem with Justice Zondo is that Justice Zondo and Zuma marry from the same family. The ex-wife of Zuma is a sister to the wife of, not a wife actually, Zondo. Justice Zondo had a baby with the sister of Zuma's wife.
So what is the problem? He should have been nice to him?
No, he's saying it's now personal. We are going personal, but I don't know why even he says that. But what we are saying is that this is not the issue of only ANC, it's not issue of President Ramaphosa, it's not issue of the Deputy Chief Justice Zondo, but it is the legal issue in South Africa.
Even,
in
not only that, even in
yes.
Cameroon, just this very week, there are two political formations that they are now, the state is now saying, look, we will not allow you to think that you have a legal way to really attempt to take the top seat. And these are people who are erecting barriers ahead of the 2025 presidential elections in Cameroon. Just like in Rwanda, ahead of the 25 elections. They have erected a barrier to this mama.
Oh, the president has also, by the way, President Kagame, he has been confirmed as coming back to the ballot. That should be taken note of. But what is of critical importance, if I may weigh in here, in South Africa, our senior brother, President Jacob Zuma, I think it is very unfortunate, and Nelson Mandela or Oliver Tambo must be turning in their graves. And all those forefathers of the ANC, and especially the fighting wing. For instance, the political party which he wants to register has got the spear, a spear which is one of the symbols of the ANC.
The ANC. The spear of the nation.
Copyrighted at that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he's going to manage it that way, because the argument now is at a level whereby he's saying when it was being why didn't you protest it at the point of gazetting? But you see, a crime, a criminal offense is a criminal offense, and once discovered, it can never be allowed to obtain. So it doesn't matter how long, when it has been discovered. That it has been discovered late, if you steal my shirt, and I am able to find out that actually the shirt, after 10 years, you are wearing my shirt, I will raise the matter.
What difference is that with NUP and Nani?
The Chibaramaz
Yes, the
NUP
Chibaramaz.
and the Chibaramaz NUP, I think they have gone for first round of court, but you remember that even the ruling that came out was not exhaustive. They are now into the second round. I've been talking to Kakonge. Kakonge was one of the founders of NUP. and I think they have another wave. Now that NUP is fracturing every other day, I don't think that it will
I'm laughing
it will not
because
be good for them.
I'm laughing because, and why I brought it in this way, because I want also our audience in Uganda to relate the things that you are talking about, is that sometimes we blame the government, the sitting government, for the failures or for the cost, for the high
When
cost.
actually even the other political
exactly.
parties who want to provide the alternative governments
leadership are also
once
making
given
the democracy
opportunity-
very exactly.
Exactly,
But
they are
look,
also
as you're saying,
cheating. They are
which is also
cheating their
true.
very own.
Because look at this man, Zuma. Not only is he infringing on the copyright of the ruling party, but this man, it is very clear in the laws of South Africa that a convicted individual cannot offer himself for parliamentary business. But this is a man who this party is fronting. So what is the aim of this?
Yeah, but sometimes this, I agree with you that is what the law, and the good thing in South Africa.
But they should be bringing that one out as their defense.
Exactly.
If they are not doing, if they are not bringing it out as their defense, then
To look
they let
political.
them keep quiet forever. For me, my interest is in can, for instance, Jacob Zuma, go ahead and register the political party in the format in which it is now? Or is the Ramaphosa administration creating barriers, unduly creating barriers to deny somebody with his supporters from registering alternative voice?
But they've gone
To
to
me,
court.
yes,
It's
exactly.
not as if they told him you
To
don't
me,
know.
that is the argument, and I'm waiting for what court is going to say. But what is of critical importance to me is that it would be very unfortunate for Jacob Zuma to claim so. The EFF, for instance, which is very radical,
Exactly.
I was allowed to register.
To register.
You see,
And the operating.
and they're operating, and
Sure.
they are force, and you see, they are menace actually.
So-
if you ask me.
Actually.
The
it's-
menace
but
to all the administrations. Mbeki, was recorded, you remember,
Yeah.
by the ANC. And to me, they claim, of course, that he's more of the outside president. He wished to be more of the outside president than the inside president, that he was more of the African president than the
South
South African president.
Yeah.
Probably that was true, because when you see what he did at Kodesiria, all these African related bodies, the kind of services he would offer, probably
That-
you
they
get
could
the
be true.
temptation that probably they are saying the right thing. But the point really here is that when you look at the case of Jacob Zuma and his desire to run away from ANC, where he should be part and parcel of making proud the spirit of the Oliver Tambos, the Nelson Mandela, Madiba, and he's now attempting to fracture ANC. I don't know whether that one is bringing the South African together, and also looking at the cost of democracy. Because you see, South Africans as a people, they paid and they are still paying
Exactly.
a very high cost to democracy.
When we come back, if there will be time, because like I said at the beginning that we were expecting a feed from Parliament session, and it will be a plenary sitting, not a committee sitting from Parliament. Well, when it happens, we'll bring it on your screens. But before it happens, we'll still be here waiting for that moment. We are going off for a break shortly, but we'll be back in a very short time to continue with this discussion of the high cost that Africans are paying in democracy.
smile is one of the first things people notice about you, so taking care of your oral health is crucial for a confident and healthy life. Here are some essential tips for maintaining good dental hygiene. Tip number 1. Brush your teeth twice a day. Use a fluoride toothpaste and a soft bristled toothbrush. Brush for at least 2 minutes, making sure to clean the front, back, and chewing surfaces of your teeth. Tip number 2. Floss daily. Flossing helps remove plaque and debris between your teeth that brushing alone can't reach. Make it a daily habit to keep your gums healthy and prevent cavities. Tip number 3. Use mouthwash. Look for one with fluoride to strengthen your teeth and an antimicrobial agent to fight bacteria. Remember though, it's not a substitute for brushing and flossing. Tip number 4. Maintain a healthy diet. What you eat affects your teeth. Include calcium-rich foods like dairy and leafy greens in your diet. Limit sugary snacks and acidic drinks as they can contribute to tooth decay. Tip number 5. Stay hydrated. Water helps wash away food particles and stimulates saliva production, which helps neutralize acids and fight bacteria. Tip number 6. Protect your teeth. If you grind your teeth, talk to your dentist about possible solutions like a night guard. Use a sports guard during activities that could risk dental injuries. Tip number 7. Avoid tobacco products. Smoking and using tobacco can lead to gum disease and tooth loss. Quitting tobacco is one of the best things you can do for your oral health. Tip number 8. Clean your tongue. Use a tongue scraper or your toothbrush to clean your tongue. This helps remove bacteria that can contribute to bad breath. Tip number 9. Regular dental checks.
And want to destroy our society. I will host the Muslim faithful for a dinner on 22nd March at 4 in the parking here. Accordingly, I'm notifying all of you and welcoming all of you. You will be most welcome. Honorable members, I'm aware that the next general elections are drawing nearer. Colleges are doing registration, and I want to urge all of you whose parties are doing registration. Members should go for registration. Mine is to give you the information. The registration is ongoing. Honorable members, I will amend the order paper to accommodate 2 motions by the Minister of Finance. The first one is to seek approval of the House for the movement of funds appropriated under supplementary budget Schedule 1 for financial year 2023-2024 from vote 13 to vote 166, and the second one is to table a proposal for tax exemptions for the financial year 2023-2024. Those are the amendments that we shall have. I want to thank you once again for coming, and we've called this meeting, this session this morning, for us to receive the minister.